Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is Joshua Kahn with your news. The University of Maine has published the results of a groundbreaking study linking bra color to memory. According to this study, participants were shown 100 items by a woman with her bra strap showing. Upon review, the highest percentage of recalled items corresponded to the proctor's bra strap color. Turns out, the best thing for memories are memories. You're listening to Derry Public Radio.
This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, C.M. Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hello there, constant readers.
And today we are covering part 2 of The Outsider through the chapter visits, if you're reading along, and if not, major spoilers ahead. And today we have Josh leading the discussion.
Yeah, we do. All right, guys. There's so much to talk about in this second part, so let's not waste any time because I have so many things to say. So we're jumping right into it. So we pick up after the assassination of Terry Mailtand and the murder of poor Ollie.
Boy,
Holly
I
Peterson.
hope you listened to the first episode, readers.
We said spoilers ahead. So we pick up with Ralph is at home because he has been put on suspension because of the incident when Bill Samuels drops by. One of the very first things that Ralph says is that he feels like Samuels got what he wanted out of that riot. What did you guys think about that?
I agree. I think that his opinion of Samuels has decreased pretty dramatically. I feel like he's kind of seeing him for what he is. Not that he was ever really had any illusions about that, but I think he lost a lot of respect for him and himself too.
This might be divisive. I don't think Bill Samuels is a bad person.
Me either.
I think he's an asshole.
Yes.
I think he really fucked up. And I do think Ralph is kind of right because I do believe that Samuels wanted he wanted a circus.
Yep.
I don't believe he wanted Terry dead, but I don't think he's necessarily. I don't think any of the characters in this book. Save one who we will meet in a little bit, are bad. They're just people trying to fucking make it through and making a long series of unfortunate choices.
Yeah, and when they comment about how, I don't remember if they say how young Samuels is, but there's a lot of discussion. Like there's all these comments about how he looks like alfalfa and that he, when he talks really casually, he seems even younger than he is. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I feel like maybe they are a little harsher on him than they should be. Because like Jeannie, she answers the door and she's obviously pissed at him too. Mm-hmm. And he says that he tells her and Ralph he's not running for re-election anymore. He's dropping it. And she replies, "So you're quitting before you get fired?" And he's like, yeah, I guess.
Pretty much.
But like that, to me, I get that her husband is very deeply affected by this and she should feel defensive. But I don't know. I feel like they came at him real hard.
I disagree. He's so selfish that I just don't have time for him. And I think that her response to him was completely justified.
Agree.
And I'm not saying he's like an evil person or anything. I agree with you guys on that. But he's just a little like slimy and despicable.
Yeah.
And hopefully that changes. Hopefully he learns something and he grows.
Yeah, here's hoping. But he has a piece of information to give Ralph, and that's that they know where they know who stole the van. We met Merle Cassidy in the last episode. They found out that he is the kid who stole the van initially.
Did we mention that his full name is Merlin? Because I fucking love that.
That is great. But it is funny that when we were like, we'll probably see him later, and we don't.
Nope.
We just hear about him. Merle stole the van in New York and he left it in Ohio. And there's something about that it was dropped off in Ohio that really rings a bell.
Did you guys pick up on it immediately?
Immediately.
Because I really like that, how they handle this in the book. It's a mystery book. So I love how King is like, he gives you the clues and gives you a few pages of where Ralph is like, that's important somehow. I don't know. I enjoyed it because it made me feel smart. Where there were several incidents like this where he's like, oh, it was left in Ohio. I wonder what that could mean. And immediately I was like, Terry was in Ohio. I love that.
Yeah, it was really, really great. Ralph then shares a story about a cantaloupe full of maggots. Does it make sense? Like, talk about the cantaloupe full of maggots.
It's a metaphor for the current situation they're in, because on the outside, everything looks fine. You know exactly what to expect, and everything is going to go according to plan. You're going to cut open that cantaloupe, you're going to chop it up, you're going to enjoy it, maybe with some yogurt, I don't know, whatever your deal is. And it's what you come to expect. You've done this before. Now, what's happening, or what happened with Terry, everything looked good on paper. Mm-hmm. But just like when Ralph opened that cantaloupe and it was full of maggots, the reality is that this situation is full of maggots.
It's not the only story that we hear. Samuels tells a story about a husband and wife camping out in the desert, the middle of nowhere, and the wife wakes up and her husband's gone, and there's a track of steps leading away from the camp, and she follows it for hours until it finally ends in the middle of a sand dune. There are no steps anywhere. It just stops and he's gone. She never sees him again. And Bill counters with this story about a cantaloupe that on the outside, just like Sam said, it's perfect. There's nothing, but on the inside, it's full of maggots. And that's impossible, because if there were maggots in this, there would be signs of maggots on the outside. So I took it as a metaphor for this case. It's about how what Ralph's wife says in a little bit, when you eliminate all of the possible things, everything that's possible. If you eliminate everything that's possible, whatever's left is the truth.
Yep.
And in this case, just because what's left is impossible, the fact that it's the only option means that it's real.
And that, I believe that's Sherlock Holmes. Is what that's from.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, right? But I hope that's right.
Yes,
I'm going to sound like a dummy.
That is right. But however, the thing is, even though this cantaloupe story happened to Ralph, he still refuses to accept any sort of impossibility. So what happened to Ralph had to have somehow scientifically happened. There is an explanation. He just doesn't know it. But in the end, this whole thing is dealing with something that is a possibility he never ever could have expected. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like there's just, it's not exactly equal.
But he found the maggots right away. That's been resolved. And here, he still doesn't know what that impossibility is quite yet. So maybe we'll see a change.
And now in this chapter, we also, in between traveling between characters, we check in with Fred Peterson, the last remaining Peterson. Oh. Which, fucking how effective are these? These are a few sentences that the first one just says, Ralph Peterson is taking a bed sheet and tying a noose. Like, it's pretty much what that...
Fred Peterson,
yeah. Fred Peterson is tying a noose.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then it moves on.
As we're going from character to character, it's like, this character is doing this at about the same time that he's watching a YouTube video on how to tie a hangman's knot. And it's like, oh no!
Yeah. Oh God, it's just heartbreaking. So then we leave that story and we go to the Maitland house, where the Maitland girls are screaming and Marcy rushes into the room to find that the girls are yelling that there was a man in the room. Grace is pointing and saying that it was a man outside the window, which made me think of Salem's Lot.
Yeah, right away.
Mm-hmm. And that his hair was short and black and standing up, but his face was lumpy like Play-Doh, and he had straws for eyes. Yeah, that is nightmare fuel.
Okay, in our first episode, I said my favorite part of this book, the part that I love, is that in that last chapter, the book pivots hard, and it is suddenly something you don't know. It wasn't before. It's a new book.
Yeah.
And that one line was like, oh, fuck. I honestly was expecting this to all be just a straightforward mystery. I don't know why I thought that. But the second I read the sentence, he had straws for eyes. Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's not going to be good, whatever it is. Face like Play-Doh really had me, too. At roughly this time, Fred Peterson is going outside with a footstool. He makes his way into his backyard, and he makes this decision to hang himself. And he says he makes this part of his decision is the hope that his family had not gotten far away, and it might be possible for him to catch up. How fucking brutal is that?
I feel so horrible for this entire family. Their kid was brutally murdered. Mom has a heart attack and dies. The other kid was trying to kill the person who allegedly murdered his brother, and he got shot and killed.
All of our main characters have gone through such terrible shit, and they're all like very justifiably caught up in their own like woe is me shit, which fair. I forget Terry's wife's name. Marcy and the girls have lost their husband. It's terrible. You know, to a lesser extent, Ralph thinks his career's over, and he has all of this like pent up guilt, and it's all terrible. And it all pales in comparison to the Petersons.
The Petersons, which we spend the least amount of time with. Mm-hmm. We basically only check in with them when something terrible is about to happen.
I don't know if we touched on this last episode. We're going to have to spend time on it, but I just want to point out when we were with them before Ollie got shot. Mm-hmm. He was they're good people. They're good characters. You like them. You don't want these horrible things to happen to them. No. And you don't expect that this entire family is going to be wiped out in the first two parts of this book.
Oh, not at all. But I mean, Fred's decision is crazy. Like it makes so much sense to him. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense to him. However, the second he kicks the footstool out, he realizes that the drop is not enough to break his neck. And he is forced to hang there strangling and fighting for survival. And his sense of survival kicks in, which is horrifying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the last thing he sees before he blacks out is a man standing on his patio, one hand resting on his barbecue, and his eyes are made of straws.
Okay, can we take a second?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean?
I was just going to ask that. I can't picture it.
Please explain to me what this looks like. Do they stick out?
Is it on the cover?
Well, no,
on
the cover.
On the cover, if you guys have the I assume just the American version of the cover with the upside down man, if you flip it over, his eyes are in a weird position on his head.
Yeah, he has really high eyes.
Yeah, it makes me feel like they're like on stalks almost. I think at one point they describe it as the holes in his eyes, like the pupils are literally holes that like go in, which makes me feel like they're literally like eye stalks.
Like a snail?
I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. Sense. It's awful, whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's... I imagined it like if you saw somebody who didn't have eyes, but their eyelids were open. They're just like that blank space. Ugh. But with the way the skin was formed around it, it was still lumpy and looked like they were just kind of cavernous.
This all reminds me of sleep paralysis. When people hallucinate like figures standing over them.
That happened to me for the first time ever, just like a couple weeks ago.
I've
it was
had that.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's bad.
That sounds awful.
I didn't see anything. I didn't see any demons or anything, but I had the very real sensation of someone grabbing me from behind. It sucked. So
is it from reading this book?
I didn't make that connection at the time, but
because we'll get to that scene.
Yeah.
Luckily for him, his neighbor is awake and hears the branch that he was on break, runs out, gives him CPR.
Runs out.
Well.
Yeah, she's a little old lady
she
with
does
sciatica.
Her best to run out. Well, and as like the adrenaline goes, the pain starts going away. I do love that at the moment, like where she's saving his life and she has a fleeting thought of like, oh, maybe it's gone for good because it's gone for like 10 seconds.
She's a tough old bird.
Yeah. But the ambulance arrives. They're able to take him to the hospital. And we find out that he has minimal brain function and it is very unlikely he'll ever wake up. So just another tragic incident in the Peterson family. And I love that when the paramedic says you saved his life, she has a moment that's like, maybe it'd be better if I hadn't.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's true.
So it doesn't happen in this section, but he's definitely coming back, right?
I think so.
Maybe he saw whatever the Straw Eyes guy was.
Yeah. We also find out that more nails in the Terry Mailtand coffin. That was poorly phrased. Too soon. Sorry. Ralph gets another call and we find out that the DNA has come back, that the blood and skin on the tree branch that were used in the assault are in fact Terry's.
Did they look at his hands though? Did he have any, like, wouldn't your hands be tore up?
Yeah.
And they always take pictures of that and investigate it.
They never mentioned anything about his hands being torn up or anything.
The only thing they mention about his hands is that he doesn't have a coke nail.
Yeah. Yes. I also wrote down, I have a note that just says, for the love of God, Montresor.
What?
They talk about the cask of Amontillado, but I can't remember to what end. The story, the Edgar Allan Poe story where he walls a guy up.
Yeah.
But he walls up a cat in there and the meowing.
Yeah, I don't
attracts,
remember what
the
context was. I did look up the short story that Ralph's wife brings up multiple times.
William
Wilson, and read about 2 pages of it and then gave up because it was boring.
Although luckily they explain the whole plot of it later.
They 100%, I meant to bring this up last episode, just fun fact, that same short story is mentioned in Firestarter.
Really?
Yes, the character that Andy, we never meet, it's one of his self-help guys that we talk about. He had set an echo off where he had started playing Russian roulette with himself.
Yes!
And it was tied up to a Poe story about someone with a double. And the way he fixed it was he just went, no, you never read that short story.
Yes!
It's the same story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, weird coincidence.
Totally missed that. At this point, Ralph has gone to the station, even though he's on suspension, to look at some evidence, and he can't stop thinking about that yellow bra strap. Right. Just real hung up on that young girl's bra.
Yeah. I last episode, CM, you kept mentioning the bra strap during the big riot scene, and I kept going, why? Why is that important?
Because I read ahead and forgot.
That it hadn't happened yet.
Should have known.
Well, as he's going through evidence, he finds a menu, a sliver of a menu for Tommy and Tuppence in Dayton, Ohio, which is where the van was. And so that's when it all clicks. So you've had this whole time to put it together, but Ben's smarter than everyone.
That can't be true.
It's the last place that they'd gone for that spring break. Ralph calls Sablo to have him look into the timeline to see when that could have happened. And then it cuts to him back home, waking up from sleep again, having a dream about the bra strap. The bra strap is very, very heavy for 20 pages. A lot about it.
And for the dumbest reason.
Well, but this time, every time they do it, they drop in a little bit more. This time it says it's the color specifically. And then that's when it clicked for me.
Can we just talk about what that ended up meaning? Because
no point in jumping around it.
I kind of agree with Ben.
Yeah.
So we find out that he has this yellow bra strap stuck in his mind because when all of this was going down at the courthouse and he's gone into that hyper awareness mode and he's observing the crowd and what's going on, there was a man. He had a yellow shirt tied around his head.
He thought it was a bandana at first.
And the guy was covered in burns and he was standing in the crowd in a specific location. Ralph he goes back through all the footage of all the different news stations who were there, any footage that's available, and he's looking for this guy, and this guy is not there. It's like he was never there.
It's really creepy, but also the fact that he spent so much time on a yellow bra strap when he could have just been there was a weird yellow bandana. And then you find out that it's the yellow shirt Terry was wearing when he killed killed
Frankie.
the kid,
Yes.
or when he was seen after he cleaned up. But it's just such, the bra strap is just a stupid red herring leading up to that.
That moment where it clicks. Well, let's we'll talk about that crime scene. Well, okay, actually, before we get to that, just there's a bit where Ralph goes to Marcy's house and she fucking lays into him as she deserves to. But he puts the idea in her head that if she's right and it wasn't Terry, this killer's still out there. So he wants to set up a meeting to talk about more options. Marcy, being the good person that she is, after kicking him out, calls Howie to say they'll set up that meeting because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that's a horrible thought to have. That
Right.
The person who did this is still out there and might do it again.
Yeah. So the next character we meet for 3 pages, Dougie Elfman. He found in a barn in Canning Township all of the clothes that Terry was wearing on the video when he was dropped off at the train station.
Except for
a yellow shirt. But mostly it was the belt buckle that got his attention because they drew so much attention to that belt buckle.
And the copious amounts of jizz.
So much semen.
But is it because
I don't
turns
think it
stuff
is.
black, and I don't think semen does that. I'm not a boy. I could be wrong.
No. This guy, he sees it and he's like, who would cum that much on shoes? But yeah, it's like the hay around this pile of clothes is rotten and black. And
The only cool part about this scene, I think, is the feeling of dread and just the spookiness that this kid gets. He's so freaked out by this, not just what he stumbles upon, but he just has this horrible feeling like something's there with him, that he leaves and is driving down the road and is still freaked out and refuses to wait there for his dad and the cops. He calls his dad and he's like, found some stuff. I got to get out of here.
And fair. If anyone else out there listening lives in the Midwest, there are the like out in the middle of nowhere single lane dirt road type places. I've always been freaked out. Like,
that's where I grew up.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's that feeling of being it's impossibly empty and
you're
so isolated.
Yeah. Even though
very
it's this
creepy.
huge wide open space, it feels like somebody could just sneak up on you.
Literally anything could happen to you and no one would know.
Yep.
Come to the Midwest.
Come visit. We'll take you to the barns we know. They've set up the meeting and Ralph goes to Marcy's and Howie and Alec Pelly are there. Howie obviously is suspicious because he doesn't want them to keep trying to find ways to justify what happened because he thinks that Ralph and Samuels are just trying to save their ass. It's a totally reasonable thing. He's protecting his client. Ralph tells them all about the van. Marcy gets defensive about their trip, saying that they were together for every moment except for when he visited his father. Now we find out why they kept saying that what his father was doing, if you can call that living. We find out that Peter Maitland is suffering from Alzheimer's, and it is very progressed. It's very bad. And Terry and his dad weren't close, so he didn't spend a lot of time meeting him. At this point, I thought this whole meeting was just going nowhere, and it was going to be a waste. But Sarah Maitland comes out from around the corner and just says, Daddy got a cut. And she explains that on his last day there, he bumped into an orderly and he fell. Terry reached out his hand to help him up to his feet and he was cut. He got cut him on the wrist. And immediately I wrote down, I wonder if it was his pinky nail.
Yeah, this is exactly what we know already happened to what's his name? The bouncer at Gentlemen, Please.
I like the way you say that.
I am opening a titty bar, guys, just so I can use that name.
Claude Bolton.
So good.
Claude Bolton is his name.
Do you guys really like this group of people?
I do. Actually.
Yeah.
I like these characters.
I want to be there with them, like, figuring stuff out. It's just a good combination. It's cool.
Yeah.
I just have to say that.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Ben, I'm glad you segued to Gentlemen, Please, because that is where our next scene takes place, where Jack Hoskins, the detective who was pulled from vacation early and is a fucking dick about it, the note I have says, Jack Hoskins went to Gentlemen Please for 2 drinks and a moderate boner.
I laughed so hard at that line. Do you have the whole...
No,
it's just, they mentioned that he's supposed to be heading out to this barn where they found this evidence, but he's stopped at the titty bar on the edge of town, and they describe his boner as moderate, which is the funniest thing.
It is so fucking funny. Sam, you want to weigh in on boner talk?
No.
You always want to get on when they objectify women, but now we're talking about moderate boners, and you're quiet as hell.
Everybody knows our weekly segment, Derry Public Radio presents Boner Talk. Jesus Christ.
That new Patreon goal? All right.
No, okay, this is bullshit because you guys get something hilarious and
Yeah,
cute,
that's a
like
good point.
moderate boner. I get vaginal garbage disposal.
Yeah, it's not the same. No. Very good point.
That's because penises are hilarious.
Also
And
a good
vaginas
point.
are terrifying? Come on.
Yes.
Grow up, guys.
I actively refuse. So Hoskins, because he went to get his moderate boner and his drinks, he shows up to the scene after everybody is gone because he's a great cop. He very carefully moves through the cones and the evidence tape to get back there, and he thinks he sees someone in the barn with him, and he freaks the fuck out. He pulls his light and realizes it's just a pile of stuff. Whew, crisis averted. Nope. Then Ben, do you want to describe your dream?
My dream?
Someone grabbing you from behind.
Oh, yeah. No, this part really was unnerving.
Yeah, it was.
Because he has this feeling of like, there's someone here, and we know there's something. We know, something's going to be here and it's not going to be good. And as he's standing there, he immediately knows something is standing right behind him. And he thinks about whirling around and seeing it, but he is frozen solid with fear. And he just feels fingers at the nape of his neck.
I would lose my ever-loving mind. Well, and the fact that the thought he has right before he feels the touch on the back of his neck is he says he knows he's going to die right now. Mm-hmm. Like he knows this is the end, and then he feels that touch.
But
how do you not scream forever?
But what's unnerving is that he doesn't. And he does eventually turn around, and he is alone.
And this is one of those things that I have the feeling that a lot of our characters that we have grown to know and love would be a lot better if Jack Hoskins did die right here. Because Jack Hoskins is a king trope. He is. He's a king trope that I can't think of any exact examples off the top of my head.
I know what you mean, like the lady from The Mist.
Yeah, he's
a catalyst for everything bad to happen.
The character who is not the bad guy, but ends up being manipulated by the actual evil force.
Harold Lauder.
Harold Lauder. People that are only evil because they're cowards.
Villain by proxy.
Yes.
We named it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and it's we don't know what bad thing he ends up doing, but later on we find out that he's gonna end up doing something
he sure
bad.
is. But he turns around, no one's there, and he gets the fuck out of there and barrels through the police tape and the cones on his way out and is done with it.
He hasn't even made it out back into town before convincing himself that it didn't happen at all.
The next morning, Ralph and Sablo meet up, which I'm going to pause before we go any further. What do you guys think about Sablo? What are your feelings on Sablo? Because he comes in and out a lot. He's sometimes a part of the bigger conversations. He's not always, because I think he's state police. And so he's not always around. I think he lives in Cap City. But he pops in every once in a while, and now he's become the resource for getting things you need police to get because Ralph's on suspension.
I like him, and he has a catchphrase, and it's not annoying, so I can't remember it. But I think
it's about
it's about being the son of a poor Mexican farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk real quick? I just feel like, I don't know, maybe this is insignificant, but at the end of the meeting with Howie and Ralph and everyone, Alex stops Ralph on his way out, and they have this conversation that I just thought was cool, because he's trying to get them to work together and to share more information, and he's ultimately at the end, he's like, we might be on the same side here. And I feel like that's the first time we really get that they are all going to band together.
Yeah, Alec does a great job of stepping outside with him and basically saying, the way you did everything is fucked, but you knew that already. The point is, I get why you did it the way you did it.
Yeah, I might have done the same thing if it were my son.
Right. It's an olive branch to somebody who is tangentially connected, because he's not hired by Marcy. He's hired by Howie, who's hired by Marcy. So he's far enough removed. And we learned in his backstory that he does this because he feels like he has something to make up for. So the idea of him putting who's paying him aside to find out what's right and what's true really rings true for that character.
I like Alec so much. And to bring back to the question we were talking about, I really like Yoon. Yoon Sablo is a great character. It's really a testament to how great this book is, how well written the characters are, that it has made me really root for a whole bunch of cops.
Yeah.
Which is not my MO. They're all written to be so human and like they're actually working for the greater good. And I like them a lot.
Yeah.
And Sablo has been written to be almost exclusively he's Ralph's go-to competent cop. Not that there aren't others. I forget her name, but the pregnant cop,
Betsy,
is also very competent. And you get the feeling that she's very good at her job, but also she just had a baby, so she's kind of out of the running.
Like a day ago.
Yeah. So really all we have to go by is Yoon and fucking Jack. And
Jack sucks.
Jack sucks.
Yeah. He's moderate.
So at this breakfast, they meet up at a diner, and Sablo, even though he obviously shouldn't because Ralph is suspended, shows him photos of the crime scene and shows him the evidence they gathered at the barn. Among the most interesting things, they discover fingerprints that were like that of an old man in his 80s or 90s. They found another set that were too blurred, and a set similar to that blurry set was found on the van. They found out that the clothes are, as Ben mentioned, just covered in semen, and that they think the same substance turned the hay black, and that there's even some of it in the loft of the barn, and they're 90% sure that those substances match.
Now, I thought the blurry prints and the old prints were the same. It's the reason they were blurry is because they are broken down, almost like that of a very, very
maybe
old
I misread
man.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could be wrong as well. So,
which I feel like
no, that's how I read it.
And then this is when Ralph wants to go back and get Bolton's interview because he mentioned the pinky nail and all of that. And all of these pieces, all of these clues, where did they take your mind to what the solution is here? You have some evidence. We still don't have a definitive answer for a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah. The killer is a semen monster who exploded in the barn to take on his new form, which was Terry Mailtand. That's why there's all this black monster semen all over. And he's just going to
That was a Goosebumps book,
jumping
right?
body. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's very obvious. It's some sort of shapeshifter that needs a person's DNA to take their form, because Terry got scratched by whatever this was, and then there were two Terrys somehow, and now we will get further evidence that seems like what's going on.
But what's with all the semen?
The semen's a red herring.
The semen's not semen, but
I don't know.
Especially because they're like, we're 90% sure the substances are the same, despite that it turned hay black.
Okay, well, we don't know yet. If I had to guess what we are going to find out what it is, I'm going to, this is a complete blind guess, guys, guess that they're going to be like, wow, we did a bunch of analysis and they're kind of like stem cells.
Oh.
That it's some kind of stem cell-like substance.
So I said it exploded.
Yeah,
it took on its new form.
Like it has to...
Yeah,
yeah, that's how stem cells work.
Yeah, its mother wasn't around to like lick up all the goo.
So our theory is that whatever this creature is, in order to change shape, has to essentially cocoon and then explodes out of said cocoon. And then its body is in a Play-Doh-esque state as it takes on its form.
That makes as much sense as anything.
I guess
We've eliminated so many possibilities. The only thing left is this.
Cocoon is better than Semen Monster.
I'm glad you concede.
No one says that it can't be both.
You're glad I concede?
Get out. Get out.
That is simultaneously such a stretch and such a disgusting image.
That's what I'm good for.
Oh, God, that's what I call my sperm. Concede.
I'm going.
Nailed it.
I'm going
Cut
home.
that joke
I
immediately.
can't. It's too good.
No, you're just gonna
Come
make
on, Ben. You gotta pull your weight.
Jesus
You got
Christ.
a cum joke?
No, I'm.
Come on, Ben. This is not
Sam,
for children,
Sam.
this episode.
Just leave him alone, all right?
What's happening?
I don't know. We just want to see if you're feeling spunky.
That's nothing.
What?
Spunky.
Spunky.
That's nothing. Anyway,
So,
Josh,
Ben, you don't
I
know.
think we really got a rise out of Ben.
Moderately.
All right, that has to be
All right. That's for boner talks. God, we're
what a
idiots.
fucking dumb podcast this is.
I hear unsubscribing. As I'm saying it, I hear people unsubscribing.
Swear to Christ, if this episode isn't titled Boner Talk, it'll be unacceptable.
Obviously, it is going to be titled Boner Talks. Now, we jump to our first official meeting of everybody who has pieces to the puzzle right now. Ralph invites Howie and Alec to his house, and they Skype Sablo in. And Jeannie, to her credit, is in. She is involved.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that she knows something supernatural. Like, she has the sense something supernatural is happening. And she recognizes that Ralph is going to continue down this road with or without her. So it might as well be with her.
You know who Jeannie and Ralph remind me of? It's not in the book, but in the movie Misery, when we get the sheriff and his wife.
Oh, yeah.
Those characters, we're just like, yeah.
This actually, okay, this is a weird road. I'm going to get all the pieces of this out here as we go, but Ralph and Pangborn are twinners, which makes Jeannie and Polly twinners.
I'm completely okay with that.
I haven't read Needful Things.
Oh, okay. Pangborn and
I don't know why
and
I
Ralph
feigned
Anderson.
intrigue when you said that. I have never read that.
Well, you got the Ralph
Yeah,
and Pangborn.
yeah.
They're twinners. They're 100% twinners.
Interesting.
And well, the first comparison, cops, sure. Second comparison, the refusal to believe in anything supernatural until the evidence so far outweighs anything rational that they have to accept it, which is what I assume Ralph is going to end up coming down that road. But there's another point that I'll get to later. They share all the information that they have. They remember, Alec points out that he also remembers seeing the burned man, so that even though it doesn't show up on the tape, someone else also corroborates that this person was there. Alec says that he knows somebody because none of them can go to Dayton to check any of this out. So he knows somebody, and he's going to give them a call. Then we jump over to the Maitland house, where Grace, the youngest, has finally fallen asleep. She's had a terrible time getting to sleep. She fell asleep in the afternoon, and she wakes up to a man in a green shirt sitting on her bed.
and he looks like her father.
He has her father's
Doesn't,
eyes.
though. It's so much worse than that.
Yeah, well, initially, he looks like her father. But as they're sitting there talking, she's noticing that he's the Play-Doh man, except he's not as lumpy. And he's really cruel. And he says horrible things to her. And the whole time I was reading this part, I was so upset and nervous because, I mean, this... whatever this creature is a child killer. Mm-hmm. And I was really hoping that she wasn't next.
Oh, I was terrified that something was going to happen until the very end when he specifically says that he has a message. And I was like, okay, she's safe for now.
He basically, she says, like, you're not my dad. You just have my dad's eyes. And as she's talking, like, his shirt changes from just a nondescript shirt to a smock, which did not hit me until literally just now what that was.
Yeah.
And we will get to that.
Oh.
So we haven't found this out, but Terry Maitland bumped into an orderly.
Oh, we talked about that.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Oh!
But we don't know the connection to that yet. So it didn't really hit me. So it changes from the smock, which I would assume is an orderly smock, to her dad's golden dragons uniform
jersey.
And he says something along the lines of like, oh, are you sad? Good. I want you to be sad. I want you to cry. And is just
calls her a baby,
pointlessly
so
asshole.
cruel.
Weirdly not just cruel, but childlike. Like not the way just a cruel person. It is so, it's almost inhuman. Like the way it's very basic and simple, and that's even scarier. But yeah, he says, you have to give a message to the policeman, and if you do, I will go away. And so she passes along the message.
Yeah, her mother comes into her bedroom, and Gracie has gotten her phone out of her purse or drawer or wherever she kept it, and she's calling Howie. And Marcy just like stands there and listens to this conversation, which we don't really get her reaction, but must have freaked her the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that message that she has to deliver to Ralph is that the man said to stop looking into this or something bad will happen. Now we get to the part I'm so fucking excited about. Alec makes his call. The first number he calls is disconnected. He calls the second number, and the phone answers, and it's Finders Keepers!
Okay.
I'm so excited!
I also am very excited to talk about this, and I hope what I have to say is not too blasphemous.
Go for it.
Have you guys both read?
I have not.
I've read the entire Bill Hodges trilogy.
Okay.
So explain just like very basic. It's Finders Keepers, and it took me a second to realize that because I haven't read the Bill Hodges trilogy, the second book of which is called Finders Keepers. So it's this big connection. And immediately I knew, oh, Josh is freaking out.
I lost my mind.
Okay. So you loved it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about it, CM?
The character is not yet endearing to me because I don't know. I feel disconnected from her.
Yes, exactly. This is the first time, and this is why I say I hope I'm not being too blasphemous, because obviously one of my favorite things, I think we all agree, one of the best things about King's work is the interconnectedness.
Absolutely.
That it is all a part of this giant, it's all part of the tower. And I love that. But this is the first time I have read a book and seen a connection and felt the way people who do not read King and do not have that connection to him must feel when they stumble across this, because I knew that it was a connection to another book and it kind of took me out of it for a while. It took me a while to feel connected to this new character, Holly.
I feel like in other books, because I've read other books that had a connection and I wasn't familiar with that connection. And I ended up actually discovering that later and going back, and I always reread books. So then when I hit it that second time, I'm like, yay, there it is. I missed this the first time, but it's never taken me out the way it has here. And I think that's because in his other work, typically he does it a little more casually. And I feel like here, we're kind of relying on knowing that character better than we usually will have to know that character. So
100%.
It seemed
I
like
completely agree.
she was written in such a way that, you know, we should have been like, oh yeah. And you and me, it's just like,
it felt so much more than any other King book where it is expecting you to have read the Bill Hodges trilogy.
If it could have been labeled the fourth Bill Hodges book, it would have.
Yeah.
Because it relies on that sequence because of, just the first chapter with Holly spoils literally the entire series.
And I wish that hadn't happened because I'm really excited. I have those books. I just haven't gotten to them because we've been reading other things.
Fair.
But we don't have to have that. Like,
right.
We could have
so much of that wasn't
been
necessary.
introduced to Holly, gotten a little bit, you know, of her backstory, and then discovered what happens in this trilogy and been even more invested in her.
Well,
the hard part about Holly is that so much of her character is directly tied to Bill and the things that happen.
How important of a character is she in the Bill Hodges trilogy?
She's massively important in the second and third. She is crucial. In the first one, she doesn't show up until about a little over halfway, but she is a pivotal point of the end of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's very, very important. It's interesting for me because when you first meet her, she is just so meek and won't make eye contact, and like she's so small.
So the things that she's doing now, like you're cheering from her because you know how far she's come.
Yes.
And we're just like, why is he describing all these weird perks in such detail?
Her taking charge, like her praying doesn't mean anything to you guys. But when it talks about her praying, I'm like, wow.
I thought that was a cool quirk. Yeah. I definitely liked it.
I don't dislike her at all. I could tell I'm missing something.
Exactly.
And it does
Absolutely.
take you out.
I will give him one thing, and I do think you say that they spoil the entire Bill Hodges trilogy. I do not feel spoiled.
Sure. Because the things they say don't make don't have the exact context.
They give one very large thing, which I won't say here, but something I assume is very important. And I don't know if it happens even in the books or whether it's in between. About Bill Hodges.
Bill, yeah. That's at the end of the
like we had with our Alan Pangborn and Thad reference where we find out in another book that Thad had a bad ending.
Yeah, so like I don't feel spoiled. There's nothing in this that makes me go, well, shit, I can't go back and read those books. Sure. It's all ruined now. In fact, it was actually a few of the things made me very intrigued. Because Holly, let's talk about Holly. She is told all of this, and Alec is her go-between, and he tells her this whole story and kind of is like, who knows whether she'll take the case or not, but immediately she is completely on board. Yep. And the supernatural elements or the supernatural elements.
The impossible is she's seen the impossible. So this is like, all right, I believe this.
Which is unexpected because their organization is described as bail bonds.
Yeah. Then So that makes me very intrigued.
There's a reason that Bill can't get a private detective license. And so that's why the Finders Keepers is under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, but I do wish I could have read, or that I would have read the Bill Hodges trilogy first.
I'm enjoying every moment with Holly because I love the character from the previous three books.
It took a little bit.
I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to reread The Outsider because I already want to do that anyway.
God,
I know.
So Holly takes the case. She is going to go to Dayton and get all this information. And what you guys will find out here about Holly that I already knew, Holly is a research machine. The woman is smart as hell, and it's well documented that she makes these connections almost out of nowhere, and her gut is almost always right. So when she has these hunches, it's just, yes, all right, this is what happens. So Holly makes the trip. She lays out an entire timeline of when the van was dropped off, when it probably was stolen, when the Maitlands arrived.
Also, how long it'll take her to drive to her hotel.
Yes.
How I loved that.
She's very meticulous, and the way she documents every tiny charge for the books. But essentially, the important takeaways that we find out are that at the time when Terry was in Dayton, she goes to visit the Heisman Memory Unit where Terry's father is. The receptionist thinks that she's a reporter and gets really defensive, but she says, "But I'm a friend of the family. Can I just go in? I'm not a reporter." And that's how she finds out that they don't know that Terry's dead. So the reporters aren't coming to them about Terry. So what is it? Well, we find out that there were two girls that went missing, Amber and Jolene Howard. They were abducted and murdered the day of the visit, Terry's last visit to his father. She pieces together this timeline, and the parallels are insane. The victims were unbelievably torn apart and assaulted, and there was so much evidence for the person that they caught. They were on camera. There was DNA. There was tons of witnesses. And that person was Heath Holmes. Heath Holmes was an orderly at the Heisman Memory Unit.
And he was also miles away
from
the murder at the time.
He was with his mother, impossibly out of town. People in where they were saw him helping his mother out, doing all this yard work. It is not possible for him to have been there.
He's also dead because he hung himself in his jail cell.
That's not the only tragedy, because soon after, his mother also hanged herself in their basement. And they even found bloody underpants in the basement of his home.
And blonde hairs in Terry Maitland's father's room.
Yes. So it's everything is just lining up. It is matching so perfectly that it just can't be all coincidence. So with all of these pieces now in play, Holly decides that she wants to talk to Ralph because he was the detective on the scene. Very politely goes through Alec Pelly to clear it and get his permission.
Tells Alec Pelly straight out, Terry Maitland did not do it.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And I love so she knows that she needs to talk to Ralph because he has information that may not have come out to her through Pelly, because that's just how those things work. And this is a testament to how great of a detective she is, because she gets on the phone with him and she's like digging and trying to get at what we want her to get at, like what we're rooting for her to know, because me personally, I can't stand the tension and the suspense of them both having these pieces of information and not sharing it together.
It's that thing in movies when you're like, if the characters would just talk to each other, there would be no problems.
Yep. She refers to it as the quote that her mom, I think she said, Macy's doesn't tell Gimbals.
Yeah, I mean, that from my knowledge of watching like Law and Order, I guess, is that cops different jurisdictions, they don't talk to each other. So there's no way that Flint City could have known that this murder that was almost identical happened halfway across the country.
Yeah, there was no reason to look there. Now we get to our final chapter for this episode, Visit, and we are back with Jack Hoskins, who wakes up feeling like shit. He feels the back of his neck is burned like it has a sunburn. He goes into the bathroom, sits on the toilet, and a shower behind his curtain moves.
Then he realizes that the shape is not his back scrubber and his shower head and blah, blah, blah. It is the shape of a man, and the man takes his fingers and he puts them around the edge of the curtain, doesn't open it, but Jack can see that he has a tattoo on his fingers that spells can't. And this person, who does not seem human to us from Jack's description, basically tells him, I touched the back of your neck. I gave you cancer. You're going to die, but I can take it away if you'll do something for me. Do you want me to take it away? And Jack passes out.
Later that evening, Jeannie gets up to go to the bathroom. She comes out and notices there's a light on downstairs. She walks downstairs, notices that a chair's missing from the dining room, and all of a sudden a voice says, "Don't move or scream, or I'll kill you." Ben?
A man is sitting in their living room, just in shadow, but she can see on his hand the word must tattooed across his knuckles. And he says, you tell the detective to cut it out and I'll go away.
Yeah, it's I've moved on. This has moved on. This is over.
And if you don't, if you keep searching for me, if you keep looking into this, I kill everyone. And like a mirror, she passes out in the exact same way that Jack does. Described, and they both use the phrase, and they fell and was unconscious before they hit the floor.
Mm-hmm. And then they both wake up back in bed somehow. When in the morning, when Jeannie tells Ralph, he flat out doesn't believe her because there's no impressions where a chair would have been set in their living room. Like there's just no evidence.
Yeah,
and he's just
they have
in
an alarm,
denial.
And the alarm wasn't tripped. Everything's locked.
He can't believe her because everything we know about Ralph is that he is only interested in things that he can prove.
Yeah.
But then she's describing what this person looks like, the tattoos, and that triggers a yellow bra strap moment.
Yeah, because I believe there's a point where he says he sees in his head just the word can't, and he's like, no, I don't need to think about that just yet.
If only there had been a titty in that word, I would have remembered it.
What?
Because the bra strap,
I know,
there's a titty in the bra. That's what bras are for.
But he works at Gentleman Please, so there kind of is a titty in that word.
Anyway, none of that made sense.
Perviest episode.
I didn't follow any of it, guys.
The point is, he's going to get his wife killed. But we can agree on that.
That
like
is
he's
true.
going to get his wife killed.
I hope not. But yeah, he tells her like I can't let this go. Yeah. I can't. He pulls the classic, what if it was our kid? Okay, anybody, you guys keep forgetting that they have a kid?
Yeah.
They have a kid that's at camp. Entire
she
book.
Won't bring him home because she doesn't want the town to face him.
Yeah, I'm picturing them as a much older couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, every once in a while they'll be like, what about our kid? And I'm like, you have a kid?
Right.
But yeah, he says like, what if it was our kid that got murdered? And she's like, oh, well, if that were, it's unfair to ask that. But if it was, I'd be right there with you.
Yeah. All of this triggers the pulling of Bolton's file. Ralph shows the picture of the man to Jeannie and she says, yes, that's the guy. So it is Claude Bolton who was in our house, which we know Claude Bolton was the last person who was cut by a pinky nail by Terry.
And he's the bouncer at Gentleman Please.
Right.
Which is why the titty thing makes sense.
Sure it does.
When we touch base with Jack before we leave him for this chapter, it goes back to him and he also notices there's no way anybody could have been in his house. It must have been a dream. And he feels that his neck is blistering in places. And we find out that his mom died of cancer. So the idea of living with a body riddled with cancer is he's reliving his worst nightmare, just the thought of this, which is our clue that he is going to do whatever the outsider says. Moment. The last bit we have is that because Claude Bolton is now a suspect, they send a trooper out, a state patrol trooper out to Bolton's mom's house because that's where the owner of Gentleman Please said he would be. The cop goes out there. Officer Sipe talks to his mom and him, and there's no way he could have been there last night. The exact same instance that we're dealing with these other cases.
Yeah, hundreds of miles away.
Yep.
And this killed me because I honestly immediately felt for Claude and his mom. It's just such a sweet scene. He just goes down to Texas to be with his like old mom.
Yeah, to cook for her and do her laundry. And
he's
he
just
sends
like
her money every week.
It's so sweet. And she's just like so sincerely choked up and just tells this officer like he's such a good boy.
Yeah, he used to have trouble, but he hasn't had trouble for a long time.
It was so nice and like pure and really fucked me up because it's like, oh, this guy's not gonna have a good
I really
end.
want him to be okay. My hope is Ralph finds out the timeline's impossible and he's just about to leave we're finally going to have the meeting of all of these characters and put all the pieces on the table. and Samuel shows up because Howie invited him along. So he is the last remaining member of this team that I did not expect to be joining the team, shows up here at the very end.
This meeting, they're all coming together. Does it remind you guys of anything or make you think of any other, not in any particular specifics, but this meeting, it makes me think of the Losers Club.
Right.
Okay.
I was just gonna say
I see that.
Yeah.
Where they are all coming together and they, even if some of them won't admit it now, looking at you, Ralph, like they're coming together to fight something otherworldly, something evil. And it makes me think so much of the Losers Club coming together as adults and about ready to start talking about what they're going to do about it.
I am curious what Samuels is going to bring to the table, because there's no reason King would bring him back to go into this meeting unless he was going to provide something vital at some point. Otherwise, that'd be a really weird choice.
There was a few times where I kept thinking like different characters would show up and I'd be like, are they the monster? Are they the shapeshifter? But I don't think it seems like that's how it works.
It seems like it's more of a process.
Yeah. Who knows if we get to next episode and we're like, well,
everyone's a monster.
Oops.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us next episode where we will be covering the rest of the book. For Joshua Kahn and Benjamin Graham, I'm CM Alexander, reminding you, time probably did heal all wounds, but God, some of them healed so slowly. Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Outsider Part 2. So you've heard our predictions about what this outsider is. Let us know yours on our social media at Derry Public Radio. Send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Please take a moment, if you haven't already, to rate and review us on iTunes. It helps keep us up there in the charts and helps other people find us, and we appreciate it so, so much. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.